Jason Delgado here with Marc Zicree, aka Mr. Sci-fi. Hello, Marc. How's it going today?
Great. It's great. Every day's Christmas. I'm living the dream.
Can you tell me about your latest Space Command project?
Yeah. Well, when I was 10, the original Star Trek debuted, and it was just revolutionary, and it really set the course of my life. And the neat thing was that it said that we can create a better future. It said that we can all come together, we can put aside our hatreds, our differences, our fears, and create a future worth living in. And it's important to remember that the original Star Trek was during the Vietnam War. It was during the civil rights movement, and the cities were burning all over America. But Gene Roddenberry had the courage and the vision to say, we can create something positive out of all of this. And so I noticed that in recent years, a lot of the science fiction films and TV shows were very dystopic and very negative. And I thought, well, if your message is the future's going to be terrible and there's nothing you can do about it, that's disempowering. And I wanted to send a message that we can reach across boundaries and barriers. We can come together out of compassion, active compassion, and not just let events overtake us. And I thought it was an important message, and I decided not to go the network route because I didn't want to be cut off at pilot or cut off at script or have the network notes ruin it. So I reached out to my fans, and my fans, via crowdfunding and selling investment shares, my fans gave me $4 million, and that allowed me to open my own studio and shoot the first 6 hours of Space Command's 12-hour season. And then with that, we're also doing 5 other pilots that I'm creating with friends who created The Expanse and Farscape and Alienation and Sweet Quest, and on and on and on. A new Rod Serling show I'm talking to Rod's daughters about that. So there's a lot in the works.
Yeah, I love it. I love the positivity. And I know you started out as a writer. How do you then transition into directing?
Well, it's funny because when I sold my first short story when I was 19 to Damon Knight, the writer who actually wrote To Serve Man, the short story that was made into the great Twilight Zone episode. And I knew that I wanted to be a writer-producer in television. Writers run television. And so as soon as I got out of college, I started writing the Twilight Zone companion to learn how to make great television. And a friend brought me into animation, so I was writing for Smurfs and He-Man and Super Friends and all those shows. And then I jumped over to live action with Captain Power, and then Star Trek The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Babylon 5, Sliders, on and on, hundreds of hours of TV. So I rose very quickly as a writer-producer up to executive producer, and directing was always something I had in the back of my mind. So I directed an episode of Star Trek New Voyages starring George Takei that was nominated for the Hugo and the Nebula Awards, won the TV Guide Award. It was done outside of the studio system, it was done by fans. And so that sort of got me my stripes as a director, and then we were off and running. My whole goal was to have control of the final product, and so my wife Elaine and I, we've been together 48 years and married 47. She's the best part of every day, and we write, direct, and produce together, and we have total control over this. This is our studio. We built it from scratch, and no one has say over anything that we do other than us.
That's great, and I've seen you with your dog here too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Eve the space dog. Because again, the whole thing is to create a family of people who love making this, who love doing this, and you can tell it's a very relaxed set, but it's not inefficient. In other words, everyone knows their job, everyone's doing their job, but no one's yelling, no one's crazy, no one's screaming. No one's getting fired on the spot, or none of the nonsense, the toxicity that exists so much in Hollywood. And but it was a very different experience after decades working for basically all the major studios and networks. When I was a producer on Sliders, you go in and the infrastructure is there. You don't have to raise $44 million to make a season of Sliders, but I had to build everything here from scratch, and so which was great, but it's definitely a challenge. And so one of the things I did was, because I knew from Twilight Zone that Rod Serling used everything that MGM had ever made for any of their productions, and on Sliders I did that with Universal. We used stuff from Jurassic Park and 12 Monkeys and on and on. So what I did, so a lot of our stuff is built from scratch, but then whenever there's a big science fiction movie or TV show that ends, I try to acquire the sets and costumes and props as much as I can to augment what we're doing. So the chair I'm sitting in is from Cloverfield Paradox, and we have things from Ender's Game, and we have things from Prometheus and Aliens, and on, Outer Limits, Twilight Zone, and so forth, which gives us much more bang for the buck. And so we can make a show that can go toe-to-toe with a network science fiction show for a fraction of what it would cost the big studios. And it's great fun. We love it.
I love that you do that too.
Yeah.
That's great. I know you've been to Comic-Con
Yes.
many times. Can you tell us about some of your most memorable experiences there?
Well, I love Comic-Con because, you have to realize that when I was a kid, reading Asimov and Bradbury and Heinlein and Arthur C. Clarke, it was a very niche genre. In other words, there might be a few thousand people at the beginning of science fiction. There were only a few thousand fans, a few hundred writers, and the conventions might draw 1,000 people, maybe if they were lucky. And with Star Trek and then Star Wars and so forth, it became mainstream. So science fiction is out big, 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 and millions of people around the world watch it and love it. And so going to Comic-Con is the meeting of the tribe. It's like, if you're into anything related to science fiction or fantasy or comics, they all come there. And it's wonderful because, first of all, there's such a positive energy. Kids can come, teenagers, adults, senior citizens. It's always such a great time, and it's filled with so much joy. And I love being able to share what I'm doing with the fans, and I also learn tons of stuff when I'm there. And it's very funny because sometimes you'll have people, on megaphones outside Comic-Con talking about you're gonna burn in hell, blah blah. And I always want to turn to them and say, people are here having fun. Is like fun not part of your daily routine? Because fun is not sinful. Fun is it nurtures the soul. And that's what Comic-Con is. So I'm so thrilled, and it's also fun that it's in San Diego. It's kind of cool, and so I love Comic-Con. They've given us a home every year. We do a screening, we do a panel, we do a signing, and I also meet people who then become friends and collaborators. So I first met Guillermo del Toro at Comic-Con, just walking the dealer's room floor, and we ended up writing a book together. So that kind of magic can happen at Comic-Con.
That's great, and I feel the same way that you do about those people with the megaphones. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's next for you, Mark? Yeah.
Well, it's we're finishing. We just started shooting hours 7 and 8 of Space Command's 12-hour season. So this year we'll finish shooting all 12 hours. We're in post-production on the previous 2-hour episode. And the first 2-hour episode is actually available on Amazon Prime and Tubi and Google Play. You can rent it, or you can watch it with ads, or you can purchase it online. And then we're going to do 5 more series. And we've also started rolling camera on a feature that my wife is writing and directing that we're producing. So, but the fun part is we're creating an ensemble of actors. So Doug Jones and Robert Picardo and on and on, Veronica Cartwright and you name it, Ethan McDowell, who's now on Walking Dead. They're part of the family, so then you'll see them playing roles in Space Command, but then they also might be in some of the other series. Katie Sackhoff has mentioned that she wants to do one of the scripts that I wrote. So this was actually several years ago. When they brought Twilight Zone back on CBS, I wrote a script called Knife Through the Veil, and it was a great script. And a week before prep, CBS's censors pulled the plug. They felt it was too hard-edged. It was going to be directed by Douglas Hayes, who directed many of the great episodes of the original Twilight Zone, Howling Man, and on and on. I mean, Eye of the Beholder, just great stuff. He was a very good friend. And so that never got made. So years later, I was going to make it as part of a feature, and Katie Sackhoff read it and said she wanted to do it. This is back when Galactica was on the air. And so I'm going to reach out to her now and say, hey, you still want to party on that? And I wrote a role for Armin Shimmerman in that as well, and he's in Space Command. So it's just these people are my friends, my collaborators, my partners, and I just love working with them. Bill Mumy, Bill Mumy from Babylon 5 and Lost in Space. He's one of the main characters in Space Command. I met him when I was 7. I was a big fan of Lost in Space, and I was homesick one day in my pajamas. I was a latchkey kid, and I pulled out the white pages, the phone directory. They used to have these big city phone directories of everyone's phone number, and I started calling the stars of Lost in Space. A little 7-year-old kid in his jammies, and mostly it was people with the same name, but not them, not the actors. And there was one Mumy in the phone book, and it must have been his dad, because his mom answered, and I said, "Is Billy there?" And she said, hold on. And Billy Mooney came to the phone, and I was so nervous, all I could do was say, will you be my friend, and hang up. But then when my mom came home, I told her what I'd done, and so we called Bill back, and as soon as I was over my cold, we went and I traded comics with him. So I've actually known him since I was 7. And so we worked together. When I wrote the Twilight Zone Companion, I interviewed him, of course. And then when I wrote for Babylon 5, we worked together. And now on Space Command, so we're continuing this tradition that's lasted decades. You know, and that's the fun part. I'm living the dream that when I was a 10-year-old kid recording Star Trek on audio tape, reel-to-reel audio, in case it never aired again. This is before VCRs. You couldn't watch a show anytime you wanted to. That I was the kid that dreamed that someday I would be on the other side of that screen, that I'd be part of that world. And ever since I was 19 years old, I've been a professional writer, and I've gotten to go through the mirror into Wonderland, and it's been the life I wanted, and I cannot be more grateful and more happy.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us and with me. It's been an absolute, honor and pleasure to be around here on set yesterday and today, and definitely a family atmosphere.
Yeah, well, if you'd like, we'll put you in a spacesuit and turn a camera on you.
Yeah.
Because that's how we roll. So, because it's so much fun. Because again, when you don't have to ask permission, you can do these things. You can say, hey, you want to play a role? Hey, like yesterday, there was a role, and the actor was homesick. He'd come down with COVID. So I looked at the nephew of my DP, and he was a good-looking young kid, and I said, hey, you want to play a role? And he said, sure. So we put him in costume, and before he knows it, he's being sucked out of a spaceship. He's holding on for dear life, saying, help me, and boom, he's out. And so it's like, what fun.
Yeah, it's all fun. Is there anything else you'd like to tell friends of Comic-Con?
Well, if anyone wants to be a part of any of the things we're doing, or if they want to invest in Space Command or the Showrunners Network, they can email me at marczicree@gmail.com, MARCZICREE @gmail, and I'll be happy to talk to them and send them information and answer any questions. But just know that I'm a fan, just like all of you are, and if you want to be part of our world, you're welcome to be part of it in any way.
Yeah, definitely, and follow Marc as Mr. Sci-Fi on YouTube and on social media.
Yes.
And thank you for your time, Marc.
You're very welcome.